Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome to Let's Talk Theory, the show where we analyze some idea and hypothesis around our favorite subjects. I'm your host, Zelrix, and today you can take out your shotgun, salt, classic rock, and old car because it's supernatural time, and don't worry, I'm gonna dress accordingly. Oh yeah. Supernatural is the CW show about Sam and Dean, two brothers hunting ghosts and demons. The show had a very impressive run of 15 seasons, and at the moment of me shooting this video, the final just aired a few days ago. It is also my favorite TV show of all time, only equaled by How I Met Your Mother, and that's why today I'm gonna overanalyze the ending and dig through the lore to disprove the existence of God himself. Chuck for the intimate. Before we begin, three things. First of all, even though you guys will see this video between the end of December and early January, you might not have seen the end of the show yet, so I'm gonna throw a quick spoiler warning for all 15 seasons. Then, in this video, we will treat a subject that might be considered very sensitive to viewers. We're gonna talk about God and the concept of religion. So if it is a sensitive subject for you, remember that every single example I'm gonna talk about today is from the show Supernatural and not from real-world religious belief, even though we might use the Bible as a reference point. As for other people's religious belief, you are free to believe whatever you want, I won't judge you, and I don't want people to be judged in the comment section. Finally, and this is a big one, remember that I'm covering a 15 years run TV show, and that we're gonna talk about timelines, time travel, interdimensional travel, universes, multiverses. By the time I beg you to subscribe to my channel at the end of this video, you might have a pretty impressive headache, to be honest. So now that this is out of the way, let's talk theory. Today's episode will be mainly about Chuck, or God as he's also called in the show, and how he might not be who he claims to be. Obviously, I've seen people covering this theory all throughout the internet, but I'm gonna bring my own argument to it. Supernatural has dealt with the issue of God for a very long time, until season 11, where Chuck revealed that he was indeed the universe's creator. At this point, I've never even considered that Chuck might not be who he claimed to be, until the finale of the 14th season, when he turned on Sam and Dean. Okay, so first of all, what makes me think he is not the actual God? It wouldn't be the first time Supernatural has a false god as the antagonist. There was Lucifer, Michael, and even for a brief period, Castiel. Then there is the fact that Chuck just doesn't fit the description of God. God is supposed to love all human and forgive our sins. Meanwhile, Chuck is depicted as somebody ruthless and face it, a bit resentful. Also, there's the fact that Chuck clearly is not omniscient. Some might argue that Chuck reveals at the end of the season that he has been writing Sam and Dean's story, even after his seemingly departure from them. So who knows, maybe Chuck knew that Gabriel was alive and he just played it. Even if this is true, Chuck still didn't know about Jack. And even if I give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he knew about Jack, Chuck still didn't know that Jack had the power to drain his essence and make him become immortal. And even if Chuck knew that, even at this point, Chuck should have known that it was Sam and Dean's plan all along. And even though we can see that Chuck doesn't know what's at the end of his book. This is information, and if Chuck was really omniscient, he would have known this information. Which brings us to our second clue. If Chuck isn't omniscient, then he can't be omnipotent. If Jack has the power to drain Chuck's essence until he becomes mortal, it means that Chuck only has a finite quantifiable amount of power within him. An omnipotent being is somebody that can do anything. There is no limit to that person's power. And even Amara, Chuck's sister, declared that he seems weaker than usual. But if he was truly omnipotent, he could not be weak because his power is supposed to be limitless. I do believe that Chuck is the most powerful being in the supernatural universe. I truly believe it. But that doesn't mean he is God by a long shot. In fact, I think he just proclaimed himself the god of this universe. Another hint is at the end of the 11th season where Chuck and Metatron finally met. Metatron doesn't recognize God beyond his Chuck mask, even though they've already met. Chuck eventually will turn on his power and Metatron will recognize God, and that bothers me. According to the Bible, humans are supposed to be made in the image of God, and if God's form as Chuck isn't his true form, it means that humans do not resemble Chuck's true form. I'm gonna contradict myself here. Some sources say that sins have disfigured the human body and that's why they do not resemble God anymore. But remember that most spirituality and religion is open to interpretation, and that's mine. Let's talk about Amara for a while. Amara is the symbol of darkness, while Chuck is the symbol of light. But in the end, Amara ends up helping our protagonist, and Chuck plays the role of the antagonist. Just like our theory on Jack and Daxter, this is a yin and yang reference. The yin and yang represent light within darkness and darkness within light, good within evil and evil within good. Oh my Chuck. This connects so naturally, we can even say it connects super naturally.
After this horrible pun, Azelrix had to go live in the jungle for 25 years, so he would forget how embarrassing this joke was, because come on man, even I am not that predictable. He then moved his fat ass and went back to his room to finish his theory. That or he was just playing video games, not sure.
Okay, that was weird, even for my standards. What I mean is that Chuck indeed represents light, and that just gave us an indicator about his true identity. Here's a quote from the actual creation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. According to this passage, God was the one who created light, and he also separated it from the darkness. Let there be light. If God created light, then he created Chuck, and he also separated him from Amara. Another important detail is that God is supposed to be everywhere. He is omnipresent. But many times in the show we hear that God is gone, that he left, that God isn't present. An omnipresent being should be there at all time because they are everywhere. Chuck isn't omnipotent, so maybe he was not powerful enough to be everywhere. Although at the end of the show, Jack says that he will be everywhere. And Jack is much more powerful than Chuck at this point. He absorbed Chuck's power, Amara's power, and all the divine energy remaining in the world. Jack has become powerful enough to become omnipresent, but that doesn't mean that he's God either. You see, in the universe of Supernatural, I do believe there is a God, and we have clues to deduce that it's neither Chuck nor Jack. Additionally, everything I've already said, we can start analyzing Chuck as a character. He is greedy and power hungry. He needs to be more powerful and above everyone else. Then why someone like Chuck, who has a literal God complex, would hate to be called God? Throughout the show, there are many instances of people calling him God, and he corrects them and asks to be called Chuck instead. And the reason for that is simple. Chuck has lived with his sister the same thing Michael and Lucifer lived, and that we saw Sam and Dean live throughout the series. Fans of the show know that one recurring theme is the father's problem, or more commonly called the daddy issues. Lucifer was God's favorite son, and he disappointed him, versus Michael, who was always faithful to his father, the father here being Chuck. If it sounds familiar, it's normal. It is more or less the same relation Sam and Dean had with their father. Sam left the family to go to college, and Dean stayed hunting with his dad. What if Chuck and Amara lived the same thing with their father? What if they were indeed the twins, firstborn of the actual God of this universe? For 15 years, we thought that Sam and Dean were telling us the story of Michael and Lucifer, while they were indeed telling us the story of Chuck and Amara. One super powerful kid who ends up defying his father, and the other one being faithful, carrying a burden, but ending up being an actual good being. This symbolized them living the same story. And let's be honest here, it is totally possible that Chuck lied to everybody about his true identity. Many people in the show, including Chuck himself, said it. He's a writer, he lies. I don't know how to make it any clearer than that. What if I told you that we can hear God's voice in the show at the end of the last episode? You see, the final scene of the show is what we call an extra diegetic scene. It means that the character can't interact with it and it exists outside of the medium. A very popular example is the Harry Potter movies. This is the title card of an Harry Potter movie. You clearly know that there is not really a title card in the sky of London. Character can't see, hear, or interact in any way with this title. This is just for the viewers. And the final scene of Supernatural doesn't portray Sam and Dean, but Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles, their interprets who talk directly to the viewer, thanking them for following them for 15 years. We even see the cast and crew saying goodbye to the camera. Seriously, I haven't cried that much for the ending of a show since Phineas and Ferb and Gravity Falls. Pay attention to the last few seconds of this scene. The camera goes flying in the air above our characters. Knowing the fact that this location is supposed to represent heaven, we can understand that the camera flies towards somewhere even higher than that. And then we hear the last words ever pronounced by a supernatural character. An unknown voice saying, "Cut." This cut represents an actual god, an omniscient being who can see Jared and Jensen on the set of the show. A god that has been with us for the past 15 years and a god who enjoyed the show as much as we did. So there you go guys, Chuck isn't truly God, he just proclaimed himself God and took his father's place as the ruler of the universe. Why did the actual God let that happen? I guess this is a story for another time. As usual, your theories are welcome in the comment section down below. Then tell me, what did you think about the Supernatural finale? I personally think it was the perfect ending to this wonderful TV show. Subscribe and activate the bell to be notified when a new video comes up. Follow me on Instagram to support my artwork. Share this video with all you Supernatural loving friends, and as always, thanks for watching.